Hey there, it is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
Well, Dan, we've done it. We found the doctor of rest. There she is. If you're watching Facebook Live or YouTube Live, she's amazing. Dr. Evonne Thompson. She's got quite a story and a brand new book called Can You Sleep Like This in the Rest of God? Doc, how are you?
Doing well today. Thank you for having me.
Now, I read a little bit about your story, and your story sounds like a lot of stories, right? We just get so caught up in life. You were working 70 hours, 70 plus hours a week as a corporate CPA, flying around the country, the world, church, family. Calgon, take me away. What stopped you and said, wait a minute, you need to change what you're doing?
Yes, as you said, as a corporate professional who's a CPA, I'm working as a consultant and traveling all over the place and juggling ministry with family and work. I know firsthand the hustle and bustle and the stressful environments that we work in and that people endure. And I had an epiphany one day when I was really tired and starting to feel sick, that if something happened to me, that my company would hire someone and they would carry on and continue even if I was not there. And when I came to that realization, I just began to ask the Lord and began to study and learn biblical principles around rest, balance, and what was a biblical basis for having more rest and balance in my life. And basically the freedom to slow down and to say no to being overburdened and living in an overtired and overstressed environment.
Now, as you did that and you started to make those changes in your life, what kind of change did you see in you and in your relationships with those around you?
Well, I think the first thing for me was just the permission to say no, and not in a bad way or unkind way, but basically being able to say no and understand what is realistic from a what's my capacity? What can I do versus not do? And not always saying what is the first thing to go, which is sleep. If I sleep less, then I could get more done during the day. Whereas when I would miss sleep or have less sleep, it was starting to impact my productivity, my fruitfulness, and my effectiveness. And so I would say, as I said, the ability to say no.
Wouldn't it be interesting if we said that we would stop eating instead of stop sleeping?
Now you're pushing too far.
I don't think
I'm
that could
pushing
happen.
the envelope. Dr. Evonne Thompson with us. Can You Sleep Like This and the Rest of God? Her new book. Now, when you started saying no, see, it's hard for me, and I think Dan and I were separated at birth, really. It's hard for me to say no. And then I've got my list of things that never stops. And then I get burnt out. And then I get angry and I said, okay, why didn't I say no? But I'm afraid to say no. And hey, if we don't say, I mean, if something happened to Dan or I tomorrow, the whole station, the whole company would shut down. They can't live without us. But that's not reality, is it, Evonne? Because you said some gold right there. Hey, you know what? They'll get another Rick and Dan. It just keeps on rolling. So, but that's all fear-based, isn't it, for us not to be able to say no?
Yes, agreed. We live in a performance culture, the culture that we live in, whether it's in the professional arena or even ministry related, it's performance. Like the more you do, and there's a paradigm, even in the church, related to that you have to be fruitful, you have to be productive, you have to be busy. However, it's an imbalanced message because the scripture also, which God himself established that principle in Genesis, and you can actually trace it through the entire Bible, which is what I do in the book about the principle of rest, that if God first practiced it himself, and he didn't need to actually rest, right? He's God Almighty, he's all powerful, and he only spoke the creation into existence. I'm sure that did not take a lot of effort or labor, but he still rested. So it's a principle more out of obedience than it is something, and it's countercultural. It's countercultural because most often we are performing and we're trying to do as much as possible because we don't want to be lazy Christians or, not being busy.
So, Evonne, as you started writing this book and doing the research in the Bible to see what God says about resting and taking a Sabbath or whatever, what kind of things did he speak to you as you were doing this research?
I think the key lesson that I learned is that rest is a blessing. And it's not something that is taboo. It is an actual blessing that he gives to us. It's a reward that when he said 6 days you shall work and the seventh day you shall rest, it's an actual blessing because in Genesis chapter 2, the 6 days that he worked, he said they were good. Everything that he did, he said it was good. But on the seventh day, he said it was blessed. It was blessed and sanctified, which is a key distinction and the only time that he mentions it during that whole period from Genesis 1 to 2. And so when I adopted that, we look for blessings and finances and other things, tangible things, but if we change our paradigm to see rest as a blessing, then it's something that I think we would be more apt to practice and incorporate.
Hey, I can confirm that rest is a blessing because Sunday afternoon, every Sunday afternoon, I take a nap. It is the best sleep in the world.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
Yes.
Evonne Thompson, I call her the doctor of rest. She's got a great book. You got to get it. Can you sleep like this in the rest of God? You mentioned something, and I know this book is for everybody because everybody gets caught. It's family, it's work, it's ministry. Years ago, I was on staff at a church in San Diego, and it was a large church. And I was trained, and this is what they said: you will not only work in the daytime, but every night you will work. There'll be somebody to counsel. You'll have something to do. It'll be rare that you get a night off. And that's how I was trained. And so you can only do that so long. And I only did that so long and eventually burn out and crashed and burned. So it's like you said, busy is fruitful. It's not fruitful when we get rest. It's so much sweeter. And you know what? When I get a lot of rest, my family can live with me so much better. You know what I'm saying? So what have people been saying that have picked up the book and started reading it? How has it transformed their lives?
Well, I think one of the key comments that I find encouraging, one is that people find the book funny because I do share a number of personal anecdotes through my journey about rest. So that's encouraging that people get my sense of humor and also appreciated my humor, but also the shift in thinking and how they approach not just family, but also ministry, that having that balanced approach and actually being intentional. I think that's the other takeaway that a lot of people have is the being proactive and intentional as it relates to incorporating rest in their lives, planning it for some people, whether it's spending time with family, whether it's taking a nap, and it may not be the discipline of taking 1 day a week, but even if it's just blocking out time for a half a day, a date with your spouse or time with children or just time with oneself. So the personal anecdotes that it is a practical application, not just an exegesis, but also being intentional and proactive around incorporating rest in one's life.
And it's interesting to look at it that way. When we think of rest, I think of a nap or I think of sleeping better at night or whatnot. But it's more than that. It's just taking time away, like you said, maybe a date night or spending time with the kids. That can be restful as well, right?
Agreed. Sometimes we think we equate rest with just, sleeping, but you can rest and not sleep. And then you can also sleep and not actually be resting. To take time for rest is it can be things that you enjoy where you're just not working. You're not doing any type of work or labor, but it's actually taking time for oneself. And then also the practice of making sure we're taking time with God.
So good. Dr. Evonne Thompson. I'm sure this is in the book. Doc, what about your mind? My mind, I try to get my mind to rest, but if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to rest, or I'm doing something that I want to do, then my mind pops up and starts worrying, or starts fretting, or starts going, oh, I got to get that done. I got to, so my mind, I've got to constantly corral my mind, renew it. That's it, trying to renew that thing so it'll rest. How did you do that? Did you have that issue?
Rick, that is so good because it's not just about the physical rest. There's the spiritual aspect as well. When God said rest on the seventh day, it was not only the physical part of ceasing from labor, but there was the spiritual aspect of where we're actually taking time to rest in God's presence, where we're taking time to reflect, remember, worship. And so I walk out key ingredients as believers that we should be incorporating as a part of the rest, which includes prayer, worship, being alone and being still in God's presence. Sometimes we're just so busy, always scrolling, always on our phone. But the principle of being still in God's presence, where there's no activity, no on Facebook or social media, not while you're listening to this interview, but that we're actually taking time to be in God's presence, not just speaking to him, but listening to what he wants to say to us.
So good.
Yeah, and that's so hard. That's so hard because so many times, I mean, we've gotten so used to always having something going on. And when we just sit and there's nothing going on, it's like my mind goes, wait a minute, something's wrong. Something needs to be happening right now. And it's just like dead air. We can't have that.
You know what, Evonne, though, this has got to be, I mean, we had an interview earlier this morning, and the book is about rest. And it basically, it's almost saying the same thing. And we keep running into authors and speakers and ministers and whomever, and they've had the same thing happen, and they've decided to put their story out there. And I think God is saying something. Hey, it's time for us to rest. And it's good. Elici.org is the place to go to, ELICI.org. Get the book. Doc, we'd love to talk to you in the late fall, catch up with you. I promise Dan and I will get some rest before we talk to you next time, okay?
We'll try to, yes.
I love the painting, the picture in the back as well. We'll talk about that next time, too. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.